did, I guess, Dirtea become the #1 mushroom brand in the UK?
Your cortisol levels are the same as someone going into war or famine. The team that takes you from 0 to 10 million, sadly, isn't always the team that takes you from 10 to 50 million. We're obsessed with customers. We wanted to be known as the educators of mushrooms. Those are the real core pillars that allowed us to scale the way we did. As long as we are making an impact and changing people's lives, that will be really what I hope Dirtea stands for.
Welcome back to Digital Cheesecake. Make sure you hit follow, of course. We've got someone I'm really excited to talk to today.
Super excited.
Jessica, I think we spoke about maybe, I don't know, a year ago. I think I didn't even speak to you. I probably added you on LinkedIn. I saw you to talk, but we were really keen to have Dirtea on the, I guess, podcast purely because, one, the amazing growth story, and also I think you've got a really interesting story to tell. Thank you. I mean, starting off with a key hook is how did, I guess, Dirtea become the #1 mushroom brand in the UK? There's a lot in that question.
There is a lot. Okay, well, if I had to sort of pin it down, I think product integrity was the #1 thing that we decided when we launched the business was going to stay core to our business. We led with research and development. We really focused on community and customers. And, you know, we talk often about the industry standards and then the Dirtea standards. And for us, I'm not really concerned with what else everyone else is doing. We're kind of staying in our lane. But the things that are non-negotiables for Dirtea and what makes the Dirtea standard is very much around potency, purity, taste, research, going direct to the source of ingredients, actually knowing what's in your products, because as a consumer myself and now as a business owner, there's so much rubbish out there. And it's really hard. And you're constantly being sold to and constantly being told what to get and try this and try that. And I think now brands are getting called out. And, you know, we're kind of sitting back going, we're going to stick to our guns. So I'd say for us, those are the real core pillars that allowed us to scale the way we did. And then we're obsessed with our customers. Obsessed.
I love that.
They're involved in NPD, in feedback, and we listen to, you know, what the market needs. Like when we're developing products, like if people are constantly talking about gut health or sleep, or, you know, those are the areas that we're going to channel. So I think the core things really are that we stay at the Dirtea standard. My life would be a lot easier if we didn't have those things, to be perfectly honest. Profit margins would be really good. But that's just not who we are as a business. And that's going to allow us to have the longevity in our brand.
And it started. Sorry, I've got so many questions.
I've got loads of questions in my head. We've all got. You go first.
But it started when? 2019 or pre, or like what was it again?
It started just after COVID.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
so like amazing timing.
Amazing timing, and everyone had this kind of. You know, they were told to do the vaccine. Some wanted to do it, some didn't. This fear factor, and everyone just kind of went, "Hold on a minute." You know, what are we putting in our bodies? And that has actually worked in our favor. So the way I got involved in the business is, you know, I was stuck in Dubai in COVID. Sounds a lot more glamorous than it was. My husband wasn't there. I was with my two children in lockdown, pretending to be a teacher, homeschooling them, which was very stressful. And I had done a Dutch test. And the Dutch test shows you your cortisol levels. And I remember getting a call in Dubai and they told me your cortisol levels are the same as someone going into war or famine, which I was going into neither. And I remember sitting back thinking, you know, I'm happily married, you know, I have a good life. How is this possible? And that evening I met Simon and Andrew Salter, who I refer to as the Mushroom Brothers, the founders of the business. And they started talking about mushrooms and how, you know, you could drink these mushrooms and there's adaptogens. And I remember saying literally out loud, that sounds disgusting. Who in God's name would want to drink mushrooms? I couldn't get my head around it. Subsequently, that evening, I started drinking mushrooms. And the transformation for me personally, within, you know, I was stuck there for about 2 months. I left there a different person. And I remember thinking, wow, this is incredible. So we spent 2 months in the garden brainstorming, chatting, talking, looking at consumers, how they buy, what people care about. And I was hooked, and
nice.
you know, I've never gone a day without drinking my mushrooms. I'm generally covered in mushrooms.
Yeah, I love it.
At all times. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, the pendant.
I got this for my birthday. I'm covered in mushrooms at all times.
Oh,
That's cool.
You know, it's an amazing jewelry designer called Sophie Lees. Beautiful stuff. But yeah, once you get into it and you understand the benefits, you'll never go back. Like, I see people in coffee shops and I'm like, what?
If you only knew.
If
you only knew.
Honestly, if you only knew the reason you're not sleeping and why you're crashing at work and why you've got jitters, it's so, you know, we live and breathe it at Dirty. The staff live and breathe it. Our customers live and breathe it as well. And, you know, there's nothing more wonderful when people...
You said some really interesting stories on the web chats with some of your customers, like some really good stories about how they came into the office and just said it's changed their lives.
I mean, so for me, there's, when you're running a business, that, you know, that there's the good, the difficult, the challenging. My favorite part is when customers pop in, or people will come up to you on the street, because we're obviously on social media, and be like, oh my God, I saw you on social media. I've got to tell you the story. It started with my mom, and then my brother, then my cousin, then and it's just the nicest feeling. And we had a lady, and it really like touched my soul, that came in, not from, you know, a wealthy situation, really living day by day, you know, with her means, and had suffered from depression for quite some time, and, you know, knocked on our door, came in, and we were all a bit like, oh, okay,
what's going on?
Who's this random person? And she was like, you know, can I have a word? I took it, and she told me her story, and she said, you know, I saved up money, I bought your lion's mane, I started drinking it, and I got on a bus and a tube and took 2 hours to get to your office to tell you that you have changed my life, bawling her eyes out. At this point, everyone knows, you know, for me, if somebody cries, it's like it's like such a trigger for me.
It's such a trigger.
It just hits you bad, isn't it?
Oh God,
you're gonna have a lot of people after this episode coming crying to you.
And I just literally went into the store cupboard and was like, okay, here you go, take it. And it really moved my soul. And she's and we get thousands and thousands of stories like that. And as a brand, we're not allowed to say it helps with this, it helps with that. There's all sorts of restrictions, and your hands are tied. But when your consumers and your customers are saying it, it's really magical, and it's probably the best part of working in a business that is trying to improve the world and change people's lives. So
yeah, I know, like, from me doing it, I know I sound so obsessed about it, but I was a really bad sleeper. And so I think when I went to an event at Soho House, and you had someone there that also spoke about how they had insomnia and that she had started using it. And then, I mean, I also then had been using it already. And so now I don't have a night without it. But sometimes I'll have a night without it because, you know, I went to Glastonbury and I took it with me.
Oh,
and like,
wow.
I take it on the plane. They should be at Glastonbury, by the way.
I take mine on the plane.
I take it comes with me. Yeah. So it always comes with me. And so, like, I think that for me, it's like changed my whole habit, because I used to take, you know, like sleeping pills and all that kind of stuff, because I was like, I need to be able to sleep, because I was always thinking about work, etc. Of course, I had to change my lifestyle a bit more, but taking that at night, I just know it puts me in a really soothing state. The reshoot, like mushroom,
it's
just so different, which is why I'm like, I can't take it in the morning, because I would either just be the most chilled, and you'd never know who I was really. So yeah, it's amazing.
I think it depends also on what you're trying to solve. So someone who's got crippling anxiety, for example, may take it in the morning, or may drink the cacao in the morning. So it
True, and some people do take it in the morning, you're right, because of that.
So it really depends on what, you know, what are you trying to fix? And then gravitate towards that. People are always like, you know, because it can be confusing, you know.
So confusing.
Mushrooms do so many different things.
Yeah, and there's so many types.
There's so many types, and it's a bit of, so I always say focus on, you know, for me, focus, gut health, and beauty are the three things that I want to combat. So that's going to be where I go with the coffee or the tremella. So that's kind of my protocol.
And you talk a lot about that on social media, don't you? Because I think similar to what you touched on, that a lot of people have seen you on social media. I 100% have seen, I think all three of you all over social media. I think you do paid social media as well. So definitely on TikTok, Instagram. How important has it been to Dirtea's success, and also reaching the consumer, which is so important as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, social media played a huge part. When we launched, there were no mushroom brands. So when we came to the market, we used the social media platform to get the message and the education across. Nice. It was never about selling product. It was facts.
Which I love, because everyone's looking for returns and quick wins at the start of it.
And also people, who wants to drink a mushroom? Like that concept. So really it was about educating the history of the mushroom, the benefits. And there's some crazy, amazing facts. We did a fact that, 54% of our DNA is shared with mushrooms. So it makes you half a mushroom. And that went, when I say viral, it became a sound on TikTok. It went crazy, and there's been some of these amazing mushroom facts that have gone viral, and then people we wanted to be known as the educators of mushrooms, and that's why we work with mycologists, we work with neuroscientists. We want to again hold ourselves to this higher regard, and it wasn't about roll up, get your mushroom. It wasn't that. Obviously, we want people to convert, but for us, the education piece is really important from the get-go, because no one really knew. Yeah. We're in a different space now.
But at the start, was it just the two brothers doing it, like on their own, and then...
So before the business launched, I met them in Dubai, and then we came back to London, and the three of us set it up in the UK.
Nice.
And it was just the three of us. We were working in Soho Works in White City. We were hot desking, and then we got a desk, and then we got our first employee. But it was a divide and conquer.
What was your first employee?
My first employee was...
We talk about it all the time, don't we?
Yeah, like who's that first hire?
Yeah. So my first hire is a amazing girl called Imo. She was fresh out of university.
Yeah.
And
that's what we love, the hungry ones.
Yeah, super hungry. And she has been with the business for a very long time.
That's awesome.
It was I often look back at that time where it was just the four of us, and it was, we were packing boxing, and it was us against the world.
Wow.
And then you look at the shift of the business, and
cool.
it's times change, and the team that takes you from 0 to 10 million, sadly, isn't always the team that takes you from 10 to 50 million. Then 50 to 100.
Of course, right?
And
that's pretty
that's
cool that she started and she's been there for a while. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did she focus on marketing?
Yeah, she did focus on marketing.
We're like, what is it? We need to know.
Yeah. I mean, look, we had to divide and conquer. So I kind of
100%.
took over growth, operations, manufacturing, the farms. The boys would then take over parts of marketing, customer service. We were constantly calling customers. Like when I say we're obsessed with customers. So we did this kind of divide and conquer, and it kind of made a natural transition on where we all ended up in the business and what our skill sets were. I definitely didn't have the patience for customer service sometimes in the beginning. I would be writing something and they're like, you cannot say that. Random people would call me up and be like, we're a small brand, and say, can you send me 60 units, please? And I would be like, no, I can't send you 60 units. Like, I can give you maybe a better price, but you're making the biggest mistake you've ever made in Dirtea.
Put me through to your boss. You're speaking to her.
And it was, and everyone was like, so there's certain patience and certain skills you need to be in specific
comes with time.
Was it really hard to source the products initially, or was it
very?
So what is that process, and how hard is it?
Oh God, that is a lengthy process. So, and that's one thing I will say has been the strength of Dirtea, but also an element of the bane of Dirtea. We go straight to source for every single one of our products. So we don't use middlemen. And actually, I think there are companies out there that provide you a turnkey. We don't go down that route. So every single ingredient had to be researched, tested, because we don't just believe the testing that comes from other companies. And it's a rigorous process. I mean, the farms, we went through about 50 different farms, different testings before we'd even launched. And we have a phenomenal relationship with our farm. I think we're probably one of the only brands who has a relationship direct to farm. We take our ingredients extremely seriously because I do think people will.
It's your key USP,
It's a
I guess.
premium product.
Well, it's a premium product, and also it needs to be a product that works.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So,
Yeah, it
you know,
does, yeah,
if you're not
yeah.
putting the right ingredients in, you're not going to retain that customer. Our first customer at Dirtea, so almost 4 years, is still a subscriber.
I
A lot
love
of people
that.
will chop and change brands, like, oh, I'll try a new this or I'll try a new that. For me, that kind of brand loyalty is everything.
What does she take? Do you know? That's
I do.
really niche.
She has evolved.
Yeah.
She was originally on the pures, and now she's on the blends, and she takes the gummies.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
the same.
So
Yeah.
there's been a bit of
mix.
a shift there.
So cool.
So yeah, we love people who stay with us the whole time, and that's really
That's so
a
good,
testament
yeah.
to the brand.
What was
And
your
to the
previous
product.
career journey? Because you were COO when I first knew about you, and then
Yeah.
you went to CEO. But what were you doing even before that?
So before that, I had a bit of a mix. I was in fashion. I was at Nicole Fari for a very short
Okay,
stint,
cool.
and then I worked at a company called eSpotting, where we
Yeah.
launched pay for placement, basically Google's model.
Yeah.
Long and short of it, we didn't patent it. We sold it for 150 million. Then I was headhunted and I went to a digital agency where we looked after really big brands. So
Cool. So you were
Net-a-Porter,
growth
British
a bit.
Airways.
So your background is
Yeah,
like
nice.
it's a mix. What
It's
is
digital, it's marketing,
Oh, cool.
sales,
Yeah. And you've done lots of ops now. Like
lots. I mean, I'm
obviously
yeah.
a CEO, but yes.
Yeah, and so the natural progression, you'll see a lot of COOs moving into a CEO role.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
just
we talk
seems
about
the
that, yeah.
natural progression
Yeah.
of that role. And I was always involved in the recruitment, the team,
Yeah.
so kind of inspiring and leading people from the get-go.
Yeah.
Whereas the brothers are so much more facing and out there and
Cool.
really championing this, mushroom
awesome.
movement.
The movement, yeah.
So it works very well.
It's
very
pretty
well
amazing
together.
to be a part of a movement or something that's like actually changing people's lives. So I'm like
Yeah, that was a big
pretty
thing.
proud of that.
That's everything. I often talk about running a business that is changing people's lives and making a difference in the world while wanting to become a unicorn brand.
Yep.
And both
Yeah.
of those are equally as important to me. One without the other is not going to work. So I really am very tunnel vision on those both metrics. And I think that's why we're so adamant on this Dirtea
Yeah.
standard and standing for our ground on brand integrity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't do that. And I think that there'll be shortcomings ahead. And I think, watch this space. I think a lot of brands are going to start to get called out.
It's happening already, and
Yeah.
obviously TikTok is probably one of the best platforms to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to get it. You have to get it right
Yeah.
because actually now there's no room for error almost, which
Yeah.
can be scary, and maybe that puts off people from actually even taking that leap.
Absolutely.
Which you don't want that as well. But I think if it's about standing for something, isn't it, and the values. Because
Put that line in the sand.
yeah, because if you waver on it, I think that's when people start to say, hold on a minute, something's happened,
Yeah.
or, the formula's changed. And you can tell straight away, I think,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
certain products. When
you can tell when there's even like new operations come in or like someone
Yeah.
actually completely changes the business, right?
Yeah.
Just
So as
something
long
like
as you
that.
guys stay true.
Yeah, and it's definitely not the easiest route to go down. I can tell
No.
you that. I toy many times with different ideas, and I think for us, standing true to who we are as people and the values that we have and what we want the brand to represent, I think will pay off in the long term. And if you can't trust what people are saying. And you see that across the board. You see
Yeah.
that in the food industry. You see that,
gotcha.
there's 60, 70 mushroom brands right now. And,
Yeah.
a
Do you
lot of-
see more coming out each week? Do you
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
constant? Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's a really strange thing for me, this. Because on one hand, when we launched, there were 2. Now there's probably 60 or 70. Somebody's always got a new mushroom
lot,
brand.
yeah.
So for me, on one hand, I'm overly excited about this because we're building
Yeah,
the
true.
category.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. We'll build the category together. And then on the other hand, I'm annoyed and frustrated because you come into the market with products that you know are not going to work.
Yeah.
You know are not going to
They're
work.
not filling with the right ingredients.
They're not filled with the right ingredients. And so where my frustration is when somebody will come up to me and say, yeah, I tried lion's mane, 3 months, didn't work.
Oh, that would kill me.
You tried the wrong product.
And
Yeah,
I will
exactly.
often
Yeah.
say to them,
Did you try ours or?
I bet you didn't try Dirtea's lion's mane. And they'll say, oh, no. Trust me, I saw this brand on social media. It's fantastic. Let's have a look. Come on, let's have a look. So we have a look at it. And then I'll break it down for them.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, there's 100 milligrams of lion's mane in that. You need a minimum of 1,000. So just get rid of that.
Just
But
switch
you'll
it up.
see, like, you know, without calling out people, you know, you'll see supermarkets and big retailers now coming out with their own stuff.
Yeah, Boots
and
does a lot
you
of
know,
stuff,
somebody said to me recently, "Are you worried about this retailer who's come out with a lion's mane drink?" And I said, look at the back of pack. It's 93% fruit juice.
I think people are becoming way too educated.
How are we calling this a mushroom drink?
But people are looking closer at the ingredients.
Oh,
yeah,
Look
they
at the
are.
M&S
Yeah.
products, which have just come out with like 3 ingredients.
Yeah.
People are paying really close
I mean,
attention.
I started like
to.
I was
Yeah.
having all my like vitamins, right? I have magnesium or whatever, and then I went and saw, okay, cool, Boots has got, and I went and chose it, and I was like, I actually went and looked at all the back of it because now you're so invested in what you're having. I was like, oh, no, it's actually not the right magnesium. It's got nothing of the
So
same
many
stuff.
fillers.
Yeah.
So I've had to
Yeah.
actually just throw out all the stuff that I bought, and I was like,
Yeah.
you end up spending the same amount unless you really know. I mean, I love sneakily using ChatGPT to be like, okay, look at these ingredients, compare which one has the best potency, and it's
good.
pretty
That's
good
good.
at giving you the
it's a-
breakdown.
Well, there's
'Cause I've
also
done the
apps
same.
now
Yeah.
that you can scan a
It's like
product.
you just can't go,
and
you
actually,
can't do it.
Yeah, I need to
But
do
you
one
know,
of those
the
apps.
average
Getting away with it
person,
for a period of time,
Yeah,
but-
but the average person who has the time, you also think that. I saw it here or I saw it there. You know, I'm in the process of potentially stopping work with a particular retailer because they've listed a product which they know for a fact is not even got mushrooms in it. And you know, I proved it to them.
That's terrible.
Oh,
and
that
it's
is
not something
terrible,
I would normally do, but this retailer, you know, prides itself on being at the forefront of, you know, research.
And you're passionate, calling them out and
And,
going,
and
I know
I'm
the
just
truth.
like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to be on that website if you're going to have that brand, because that is not saying that you've done your research.
Yeah,
and that
true.
shows me that anybody can just come on. And no,
You don't want to be associated with
yeah,
that.
I just don't want to be. That being said, I'm not overly concerned or worried about the noise of competitors.
Yeah.
I think it's always healthy.
It makes you better.
Yeah, it makes you
Definitely.
better. And I think we are constantly, as a brand, evolving, improving, developing. You know, we now have vitamins in our products. Innovation is key to our business, but so is consistency. And I think, you know, we talk about, you know, momentum and having one big moment. I'm not interested in one big moment. I'm really interested in thousands of small moments in a row.
Yeah, I
and
like
that's
that.
really where I'm focusing. So there'll be brands that will come and go, and you know, we never speak ill of any brands, but I'm definitely frustrated.
You definitely think
stuff
it.
that's going on out there.
You've caught me on a particularly frustrating day because something happened this morning. But
Oh, no.
It's fresh
those
as well.
it's those
Yeah.
type of things.
Yeah.
I think there's a responsibility.
Yeah.
You know.
You mentioned
That's
before the
what it
podcast
is,
you
yeah.
want to grow the business. So
Yes.
keep going, see how far you get it. So
Yeah.
one of the challenges you mentioned is the 60 competitors.
Yeah.
But if anyone's listening who is thinking, I want to set up a business, grow a business,
Yeah.
at this moment in time, what challenges are you facing, which you know you'll overcome because
Yeah.
you'll find the solutions, but what are they, just that people can understand the lifespan of a business and what the challenges you actually go through.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge is hiring the right people is always a challenge.
Yeah.
We've been very fortunate to have some great people, and you know, sometimes we've not been so fortunate. I think you know, cash flow is a real key one. So one of our issues that we've had several times in the beginning and sometimes now is when you're forecasting and you use social media and you suddenly go viral and you sell 6 months of stock in 1 week. for example, which has happened several times.
That's a good point.
You know, you go to your friends and family, they're like, that's amazing, that's
But
brilliant.
you don't want to
But it's
ruin it.
actually the worst possible thing to happen to a business. So I think really understanding your forecasting and how you plan things out, and it's really difficult. Speaking to customers and seeing what they actually want. We went through this we came out with sugar-free gummies, and we were adamant. You know, every single person was saying, put sugar in them. They'll taste better. You know, but then you go and look at all the big brands out there and they've got 5-6 grams of sugar in them. Well, if I'm going to have 2 gummies a day, that's 12 grams of sugar. I would rather go to a newsagent and know what I'm getting there.
Correct.
You know, I just I feel that this weird way of disguising things. So I think speaking to your customers, looking at, you know, brand loyalty, looking after the people that have been loyal to you, and really doing things, whatever you do it well. You know, you don't need to conquer every. You know, people are always saying, why don't you launch this? Why don't you launch this? Well, I'd rather focus on consistency and developing these areas. So keeping that laser focus, having good values. I talk about values a lot, and holding yourself to a higher regard than others do.
Nice. What is that higher regard? What do you hold yourself to?
For us, it's to be the purest and most potent on the market, to be transparent as a business, to listen. For example, if we do go out of stock, we're hands up immediately, you know. But also, I think it's important not to allow people to push you around. I think in retail, there's a real.
Can you tell us some stories or give us some?
Don't have to name names, maybe.
Can I tell you some stories?
Top level, not that much detail.
I'll tell you a top level story, and some people listening may get it, but hopefully most people won't. We had a retailer that we had worked with for a very long time, and they put in they were a good retailer, but they put in a crazy order, and they were adamant it needed to get there before Wednesday. And I was like, guys, this is a huge order. We got everything ready for them. It was taken, you know, to their warehouse. It arrived on a Wednesday, I think, at 12, and at 2:00 they went into administration.
No.
Oh my goodness.
And they had done that with a lot of
Were you able
brands.
to get the stock back?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were one of the
How many orders did they do?
That's really good.
It was a big order. It was hundreds of thousands.
Are they certain they didn't know that was going to happen, though?
Well, they always do. We always know.
But a lot of brands who worked with them went out of business.
Awful. Awful.
Yeah, that is really awful.
And so for us, we will not get pushed around by retailer. Retail is a huge channel for us, and we have incredible relationships with retailers, I should say. But we will stick to our margins. We will stick to the things that we are willing to do, because there does become this price war. You know, I'm going to put you on sale. I'm going to do this, and it's an ongoing challenge that we have as a brand. So there's retail is an interesting one, but it's an area that I would say we are really thriving and doing well in. We were the first in boots.
That's good.
Which was a good thing. There's some very exciting things to be announced soon about Dirtea.
I'm excited for new products.
New products, new retailers, new expansion.
What do you think is the, I guess, like, obviously you guys want to be the number one and most potent, but what do you think is some cool stuff you're thinking, like, you know, in the future? Like, obviously new markets potentially, or what would you like it to be in like 5 years' time?
I mean, in 5 years' time, I would like us to be a global brand. I think there are, you know, when you scale, you have to scale efficiently. I mean, we've been approached by huge retailers in the US, huge. And you have to weigh up the options where we are as a business right now. It could make or it could break us. And that is too much of a riskier strategy. So I think being a global brand, you know, working with hotels,
I think so.
Hotels
would be amazing. If I one day see it, I'll just I cannot wait.
Well, I mean, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised soon. There is a lot of exciting things happening. I think for us, as long as we are making an impact and changing people's lives and doing good, that will be really what I hope Dirtea stands for in 5 years. We have a big 5-year plan, and I feel like we are on the trajectory to get there. Expansion is obviously a big one for us.
Yeah.
I know you talk about Australia.
We're waiting.
Well, Australians actually were one of the first countries to really talk about mushrooms. I will say that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were. They were
Yeah.
on a very, very small scale.
Yeah, we're a small country.
But that we'll have Russian people coming up to us and being like, "Oh, we've been drinking chaga for years."
I love that.
Those type of things. So mushrooms have been around for thousands of years. This is not a new product, but it's how you utilize it that can dramatically change your everyday life. I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm a better version of myself. I live a much more fulfilling life.
Which is what people want.
As opposed to running to Starbucks, downing my coffee, going into work, grabbing my cereal. I mean, I think about how I lived before and how I live now. And, you get the same version of me in the morning as you do in the afternoon, as in the evening.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I
love it.
So, it's all positive.
Any final questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, so a lot of people are thinking about like setting up their own businesses or doing it. People looking at private equity or looking at other people to join business with. So how important is it to join forces with like another founder or co-founder, would you say?
So for us, we are in a slightly different way of our expansion, I would say. We did a family and friends round in the beginning, and I think that's quite a good way to start the business. And then we were fortunate enough to have Bear Grylls invest in us.
That's really cool. Have you been to his island?
I haven't been to his island. The boys have. The boys have jumped out of a plane with him, out of a helicopter with him.
Nice.
They were living a good life. Yeah.
We're also very fortunate to have some celebrities who have invested in us as well.
Oh, brilliant. That's good.
So, I think joining forces with someone isn't something I would do at this point, because I do think when you do join forces, you have an influence that could potentially affect the way you run your business. I think if you can hold that within your own kind of realms in the beginning and really set, because I think maybe if, I don't know, somebody came in and invested in us, a very big company, they might say, okay, you don't need to be that potent.
Said that before.
Let's
true.
add
That's
this.
the problem.
Let's do that. So I think depending on where they are in their business, I think talking to banks, I think there's government loans out there now that people can approach. I think if you've got a good idea,
Run with it.
Run with it. And crowdfunding. We've never done crowdfunding, but I do see some interesting things on crowdfunding. People think it's really desperate, but then on the other hand, I think it's actually really cool that
if
you've got
people are
all
into
of
it,
these people wanting
Strangers
to kind
as well,
of
I love it.
fight for their mattress to stay on the shelves or whatever. I think there's
Yeah.
something quite magical about that. So I would probably go down those routes first, as opposed to the other routes.
Did
I
you?
agree.
Because a lot of people talk about having mentors or support networks. Did you ever have a mentor even before this, and a sort of wider support network?
So you're preaching to. I'm all about mentor. I used to be a mentor. I had a mentoring business after I sold the first 2 companies, and throughout the first 2 companies that I was involved in, I had a mentor. So I'm a huge advocate of mentorship, and actually I think it's very underrated. People don't realize the power of somebody just taking you a step back and looking at the hurdles and how you're dealing with things. Because when you're in it, you're in it. And I also listen to a lot of podcasts. I love talking to other founders, whether they're in the same space or not. The problems that I'm having are the problems that other founders are having. And the thing about leadership is that leadership comes with a pressure that unless you're in it, you wouldn't know about it.
100%.
And there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, from staff to customers, to investors. And I think for me, that's been a big lesson on how you can cope and how you can handle moving forwards and running this business. So I'm a big advocate of mentorship. I
So you
think
said you used to be a mentor. Are you still taking any mentees?
I'm not.
I'm
I'm just trying to get my kids
Yeah.
to listen to me right now. Well, I mean, my husband sometimes says to me,
You have a
"You've
family, I
got to
forget."
stop talking to the kids like this." They'll come in from school, and I'll be
funny.
like, what was your highlight today, or what's your growth plan?
pain point?
Or
Yeah.
what does success look like to you?
I just want to play.
That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
the kids will be, well, they'll say, "Oh, I'm not good at maths." I'm like, "You're not good at maths now or yet." We're on a growth mindset here.
We've seen that podcast as well.
So we're
Wow.
all about
Yeah.
we're all about gratitude, manifesting, journaling. We've got
Yeah.
quotes all over our house. But
cute.
Oh, that's good.
I think we live in a world where it can be quite easy to get pessimistic, and
Oh,
you could turn
100%,
around and
yeah.
be like, "Oh, what am I doing?" Or
Yeah.
"I don't spend enough time with my children." Well, I'm on a purpose-led business. I come to work every Monday morning with a bounce in my step and super excited to face the challenges and the opportunities of the week. And I think that there is something to be said about loving what you do.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes.
And I
100%.
genuinely
You're a better person
believe
at
if
home,
you've
yeah.
got
Yeah.
brand integrity, you love what you do, you're focused, what's not to succeed?
Yeah.
Are you in any sort of interesting sort of founder groups that you can mention, or founder networks?
The Simon and Andrew are much more involved in that. I think they
you.
don't have families, so they'll go to a lot more events. They'll
Yeah.
do podcasts
Yeah.
as well. I have a group of founders that will be on WhatsApp, and they'll send me a message being like, "What the hell is Trump doing?"
Yeah.
I know.
is a big
I'm like, it's
question at the
8:07
moment.
on a Monday morning.
Yeah,
Give
I'm not
me in a
into
minute.
that. Yeah.
There's a bit too much venting on certain things.
That's
So-
true. Yeah,
and
that's
I
a good
think
point,
actually
yeah.
he's doing what he's doing. How are we going to find the solution to it?
Yeah.
I'm much more, and that's where my mentorship comes from. Is that
Solution.
we're always,
Solution-based.
solution.
Yeah.
So I say in the office all the time, I only hire superstars.
Love it.
GSD, get shit done.
Yes,
And
like
come
that
to me
one.
with a solution. There's always going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Come to me with a solution. So those are the ways
That's
that
what
I
I
kind
always
of
say. My team
Yeah, we
hate me. I
always
say
say
I
that.
do not want the problem. Have you tried to find the solution?
yeah.
And it better not be ChatGPT, but it can be. But I love that.
Bring the
Nice.
solution, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
like
well,
that.
thank you
Yes,
so much
good.
for being on the
Thank
podcast.
you so much.
Yes.
You guys.
It's been
Thank you.
awesome. I'm going to have all of this afternoon.
I know we could keep going, but that was really good.
I know you wanted to keep
Okay.
going.
I know.
Thank you
No,
so
yeah,
much.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much
That
for
was
having
great.
me.
That was so good.
Brilliant. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so-